father worked for Bell Aircraft in Buffalo, New York, when I was a toddler, so it was model airplanes all the way. And he later worked for Northrop Aircraft in California. When the war effort got really strong, the Selective Service System was now drafting men that were married with 2 children. So they drafted my father and sent him over to France, and he participated in most of the Battle of the Bulge, and came home at the end of the war. I took flying lessons from money I made from a paper route. I had taken 9 lessons at that time during that year, and then I ran out of money and did it again a year later. And then I flight instructed for a while. Then I got a job flying cargo in these airplanes and in C-46s. And then I got hired by Delta Airlines in 1964 and flew 32 years with them. Flew the DC-6, DC-7, DC-8, DC-9, Boeing 727, and the L-1011. And now that I've been retired for a few years, I live in Florida in the West Palm Beach area in what they call a community air park. It's a grass runway with 37 houses. And when I have my coffee in the morning, I look out the window and there sits my Cessna or a Fairchild or something else.
Now, another moment of freedom from Cirrus Aircraft. Freedom through safety. Perhaps the ultimate freedom is confidence, assurance, and peace of mind. We design it into every personal aircraft we build. It's the security that comes with knowing you're flying the plane with a parachute. The breakthrough concept that launched the Cirrus phenomenon.
This airplane was manufactured in March of 1942 and delivered to the U.S. Army Air Corps in October 1942. And it flew freight and cargo missions. It carried everything from jeeps to freight, cargo, food, mail. It would take the remains of soldiers back home. Then when General Eisenhower, the Supreme Allied Commander of Operation Overlord for the D-Day invasion, decided that the DC-3, the C-47 version of the DC-3, was what they needed the most because it could tow a glider and carry 21 paratroopers at the same time. Now, Douglas started building the DC-3 back in the 30s for airlines. And when America got involved in World War II, they asked Douglas to build them a military version of the DC-3, which has the double opening doors, has a stronger landing gear, and a particular model engine that was more prone to survive small arms fire. I think they built probably 6,500 of them, and they all went over there. A lot of them are still over there. They're scattered all around the world. This airplane behind me actually flew in Normandy during the invasion. It was position number 50 in an armada of about 125 airplanes. It had 21 paratroopers on board weighing about 300 pounds apiece with their gear. Because with them they had their auxiliary parachute, they had 55 pounds of ammunition, another 40 pounds of hand grenades, they had their foxhole shovel and all the other stuff they needed. So at 3:30 in the morning, they all jumped out in total darkness. And the glider got off a little while later. Now this airplane flew again in Normandy, over Normandy, to supply the troops that were then advancing. It did that a few times. Then the airplane flew in the Ardennes theater, it flew in the Bastogne theater, and it flew in the Battle of the Bulge, and it flew in the Berlin Airlift, where we carried supplies into West Berlin that was cordoned off by the Russians after the end of World War II. They weren't letting ground transportation in, so they flew supplies into West Germany. In 1955, the airplane was transferred to the Norwegian Air Force, and it did service there for a few years. Then it was transferred over to the Danish Air Force, to the Lend-Lease program. The Danish Air Force then began flying the royal family around in it. That's why the aircraft has seats and an interior and insulation and handholds. In the early 80s, the airplane became surplus and was sold to the Valiant Air Command Warbird Museum in Titusville, Florida. When the museum went over there to get the airplane, they wound up buying 3 of them. They ferried all 3 of them back. One was in very worn out condition, and that's the parts airplane that supports the other 2. So this is the one that lives at the museum in Florida. The other one is on lease to a freight outfit up in the Northeast someplace. Now this airplane just came out of an 8-year restoration. It had strip and paint, engines, props, avionics, cables, pulleys, whatever. Went completely through it. Thought it was going to take 3 years. It took 8 years. basically rolled out as an airplane equal to a new one. The engines are 1,200 horsepower apiece. They burn 50 gallons per hour each. The airplane has 4 fuel tanks under the center section, roughly 200 gallons apiece for a total of 800 gallons. So it has a duration aloft of approximately 7 hours and a range of almost 1,000 miles.
If you own a Cirrus today, or if you are considering the purchase of a new or used aircraft, consider this. Aviation, in conjunction with the country's leading Cirrus sales and maintenance facilities, has launched the G3R9 program that combines the purchase of a late-model, low-time Cirrus aircraft and the addition of the Aviation Integra Release 9 avionics suite for much less than you may have thought, and certainly much less than purchasing a brand new aircraft. G3R9, combining the best airframe, best engine, and best avionics for the best value.
On Monday morning, it was decided that we needed a 1221 engine start, and they had the airplanes lined up in 3s and 4s on the ramp. And with all those engines starting up and all the smoke coming out and looking out and seeing all the C-47 airplanes, as we taxied out on the runway in pairs of 3, it was beyond awesome. The only thing missing was the acid feeling in the stomach that those guys doing it for real on D-Day were doing. Now the formation flying up here was a barrel of fun. You know, flying right next to and slightly behind another airplane and waving at each other and rocking our wings and eating sandwiches. And we flew directly north out of Rock Falls, and all the different airports we passed over, the control towers are talking to us. What is this? What are you doing? And all this other kind of stuff. We radio back, well, we're having fun. We don't know which way is Oshkosh. Yeah, we're definitely an aviation family. I have 6 sons, 5 of them fly. 2 of them are presently furloughed from airlines. I have sons that dropped skydivers, towed banners, did air charter, all kinds of other things. And our hobbies are model airplanes, both radio control and control line. It's aviation all the way. In closing, I have to confess that I really believe that aviation is perhaps the only order in my life. Everything else is chaos. All right, gentlemen, thanks for the interview. It's time to go fly.